Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon. And it's time for that show again. It's time for that community activist, the one and only, the hardest working lady on the internet, in the community. I'm talking about that community activist, the one and only Miss Georgia Allen. Good afternoon, Georgia. How you doing?
Good afternoon. Look, there can always be hiccups. I mean, today I was sitting there trying to make sure I had everything in order and on point. And as always, there can be one issue after another. Today, I'm just praying that my computer stays up the whole entire show. Because I've been fighting with that this morning. But anyway, it is Thursday. And what happens on Thursday? GA for Just Is. And as always, I am Georgia F. Allen, and welcome to the program today. I want to give my opening greetings, then tell you the topic of the show and talk to you a little bit about KWANZA principle for today. Okay, it is Thursday. And as always, we want to thank Mr. Henderson Vaughn, aka Captain 85, aka the Dream Maker, who has opened up the airwaves to us so that we can bring you a conversation, bring our listening audience a conversation for information, a conversation for correction, as well as a conversation for transformation. And as always, I want to do a disclaimer. Most of you do know and are aware that I have worked in the area of civil rights and have been a community activist for decades. Therefore, the various positions that I may take are mine and mine alone. I do not speak on behalf of any groups or any organization. And today I'm going to focus mainly on our young people. And you probably see my shirt. And yes, even though I have my NAACP shirt on, I will speak to those issues that are germane to the NAACP. And today's conversation is your vote throughout the rest of the year. I mean, throughout until the election takes place. It's going to be about your vote. It's going to be about the election. It's going to be about making sure that the things that we do, that they are pushing toward ensuring that we have a strong vote come November the 5th. The topic today is power through practice. And again, I'm going to focus a lot on our young people today. And the KWANZA principle focus is UJIMA, cooperative work and responsibility, to build and maintain our own stores, shops, and other businesses, and to profit from them together. Our youth is about cooperative work and responsibility. Our community is about cooperative work and responsibility. Our power through practice is ensuring that our young people know that they're going to have to practice. They're going to have to go before council and school board and these other places and get in the habit and getting the practice of speaking their truth. And so today, as we focus on our young people, because we have watched generation after generation make missteps and sometimes failures, we also have seen numerous successes. So we want to make sure that as our young people take on the baton and as we light their torch, that they don't get discouraged because there were missteps. We don't want them to get discouraged because there may have been, some failures. I don't give a hoot what group or organization you're in. There are going to be some missteps and there are going to be some failures. But we need our next generation and our now generation to know that maybe they need to revamp. Maybe they need to press the reset button. When our computers don't work, guess what? We turn it off, we reboot it and turn it back on. And if we're going to have real power, we're going to have to practice these things and get better and better at these things. It's not going to be a one and done situation. We're going to have to recognize that we have to learn from the things that the previous generations have done. We're going to have to learn that there are going to be some pitfalls. It is not going to be perfect sailing. The steps sometimes may be broken, but we're going to still have to climb to get to the next level. And so when we run into these pitfalls, don't act like it's the end of the road. It is not the end of the road. And one of the things that I want to say, because a lot of times people want to run a race, but they want to stay at the starting line. If you stay at that starting line, you will never win that race. Everybody that ran around the track, they're going to come across that finish line. That starting line is now the finish line. So keep in mind that staying at the starting mark is not a winner. You are going to have to step out on faith, step out believing that you can win the race. So the power in running a race is you practice and you practice and you practice some more. You don't just stand at the starting line. You go around the track and you finish the race. And so don't let anyone disrespect our previous generations because they did not get everything right. You're not going to get everything right. Okay, keep that in mind. You will not get everything right, young people. And I just want to remind you, there are going to be some hiccups. It's not going to be an easy road, because when you're working on behalf of your community, when you're working to build something better than what the previous generation built, you're going to have to look at what they did. Otherwise, if you don't look at what they did, you're not going to be able to make the adjustments. And the chances are you're going to continue to make similar mistakes. And so power through practice means you got to try it again and again and again. But the best experience is someone else. The best experience is someone else's experience. And if you learn from their experience, you won't make the same mistakes. Doesn't mean you won't make any mistakes. It just means that if you really learn from the other people's experience, you can build your power through practicing. You can build your power through making sure that you learn something from what others did. And that power through practice will allow you to do better, will allow you to be stronger, will allow you to strengthen the knowledge of what someone else has gone through. Power through practice also means that you can't keep getting angry with these political parties when you haven't attended a city council meeting. And the reason why I'm talking to our young people, because I've had these conversations with those of my generations. Hello, Teresa. I've had those conversations with folks in the faith community. I've had those conversations with those in the various groups and organizations. So I just want to remind our young people, if you're genuinely interested in building power, you're going to have to go to the council meetings. You are going to have to go to school board meetings. You are going to have to sit down with your state legislature and your city council representatives and know who they are. Have those conversations. If you've never set a foot in Congress and you've never been to the General Assembly and you've never talked to an elected official, you can't be mad when the things that you'd like to see done don't get done, because you haven't done your part. You haven't leveraged your power because you have not practiced what needs to be done so you can get really good at doing these things so that you can strengthen yourself. You can begin to build on your knowledge. And if you're not building on your knowledge, if you're not doing the research, if you're not doing the things that need to be done, then guess what? You may not see the results that you want to see. You just might not. Now, because we are off a little bit in time, I'm going to have to structure this to try to remember when to do my announcements and my acknowledgments. But for now, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how important it is to work together collectively, to be responsible when it comes to our community. Because if we don't, we're going to keep on doing the same things over and over again and making the same mistakes. And then we're going to end up with the same results or worse. And so what we want to do, we want to make sure that we build on what we've started and continue to develop our young people. And for me, it's about the next generation. It's about the now and the next generation. And how do we make sure that we build on this to improve upon what we started and make sure that our now and our next generations do not have to go through a lot of the things that we've had to go through. And so one of the things that we do is we understand what real power is. We engage our young people now and not wait until the last minute to engage our young people. So we engage them by making sure that we share the information that we know and then listen to what it is that they know and answer the questions when they have them. So it's not enough to just sit there and just be the person that's doing all the talking. We also have to listen. Our scripture today was, your mistake is that you don't know the scriptures and you don't know the power of God. And that is from Matthew 22:29. And because we're talking about power today, don't continue to make mistakes by not gaining knowledge. Okay. When it says you make mistakes that you don't know, your mistake is that you don't know the scripture. So not knowing the scripture really is, are you reading? Are you researching? Are you investigating? Or are you only listening to the talking heads that throw information out that may not be truth? So we look at it from a standpoint of scripture, but we also are a part of this world in that we don't have to, but we tend to be a part of the political process. And if we're not reading about candidates, if we're not learning about how they stand on issues, then we are too making a mistake when it comes to civics. We are also making a mistake when we don't know what power we have and we don't know the power of the God that we serve. Some of us are persons who don't believe in God. And I'm not going to get mad at you, because for you to believe in God, you have to see somebody who believes in God and how they act that will sway you one way or another. And if their actions prove that their behavior is such that it's a turnoff, then that's not their fault. That's the fault of the person who claim and profess to believe in God. So you also have to take that into consideration as well. The other thing is, do you know how to garner power? Do you know how to build and strengthen power? Because if you're not garnering power from those who already have it, then that too is a problem. That can be a real problem. The other thing that we want to look at when we're talking about power through practice is, in order to gain power, to garner power, to build power, you're going to have to practice sitting at these tables. A lot of people feel like when they sit at the table, that means they have power. No, it simply means that you had an access to a table. You sat down at a table. But if you never leverage any of the power that you had, you just dessert. You're simply just dessert. You're sitting at that table, you're eating at the table, but in essence, because you're not moving anything, you're not doing anything that changes the decisions that are made at that table. And this is for my young people again. This is for my young people. I want you to understand, if you're not influencing anything at that table, if you're not changing decisions at that table, then yeah, you're sitting at the table and you're still on the menu. Okay, you are still on the menu. So what we want to make sure is that the next generation treats things differently. Don't get so excited about sitting at the table. Don't get excited about that if you haven't had the meeting before you got to the meeting. Don't get so excited about sitting at that table, because when you go to a table, you should have already decided ahead of time what your goals and objectives are and what you're going to do to push forward your agenda. You need to make sure that you've done all of that. You need to make sure that you are working to ensure that the things that you want to achieve, that the things that you want to see voted on, that those things get done. And how do you do that? One, if you bring 3 people to the table, each one of them should have their talking points. And all of those talking points should lead to the outcome that you want. So if we're going to the table and we're asking for for someone to watch our police officers, to make sure that we have in place a system that evaluates whether or not the police officers are doing what they're supposed to do, then each one of us should come to the table saying, okay, when we get there, one, I want you to address police officers' shootings. And if that's your issue, you want to know that inside and out. If the other person comes to the table and they want to address police behaviors, then you should also know that issue inside and out. Now, if there's another person at the table who wants to address how the police officer is being evaluated, then you want to have a list of things that you want them evaluated on. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Okay. So when we are working in the area of justice, when we are working in the area of civil rights, when we are working in the area of education or economics or any of these issues, keep in mind that you don't just want to go to the table and say, oh, well, I listened and they said these things. You want to go to the table, young people, and you, in fact, want to have those issues that you care about, but you also want to go there with solutions. You say, well, why should I have the solutions? Because if you don't, when they think about solutions, they may think about them very differently than how you do. Okay. And if you come there correct, then you have power. If you come there correct, you can begin to wield your power because you thought about these things before you ever got to the table. And because you thought about them, and because you met about them, because you talked to people about them, because you formed a coalition of persons who can also assist you. Now, when you go to that table, young people, you can leverage your power. And if they push back against it, you know that you can pick up the phone and you can say, okay, I have this group of activists in the community who are concerned about how police officers treat young people. And so because you have formed this coalition of other young people who are concerned, now when you talk to the people who are in the decision making area, you can push back against that. Or if you have a strong faith-based community, you can say to the ministers, we need a letter from you. So you form this letter, and then you have attached to this letter 150 pastors or so who also agreed that these are the things that are important and that this is the agenda that they want to see implemented. Because you want decisions made, but a lot of times they will make decisions, but they won't implement anything. So also keep that in mind when you're dealing with the public, when you're dealing with elected officials. Think about the various things that are part of this. There's that decisions that they can make, but there's also the implementation of the decisions. Okay. They make a decision and say, hey, going forward, we are going to make sure that we follow this policy. And then later on, they forget about that this is what they said. What you want to make sure is at what point in time did that policy actually get implemented? And you want to follow that. So politics and policy is an ongoing process, but that's how you build power, because you stay focused on these things and you push forward that agenda that you want to see implemented. Are we clear?
Yeah.
Are we clear? Okay. All right. Okay. Again, the topic is power through practice. Well, guess what? You're going to have to practice this stuff over and over and over again. You're going to go before school board and city council meetings. But there's also all these other meetings that take place where decisions are being made more or less behind the scene. And those are your council committees. Those are your school board, various committees that you can serve on. We need to get more people engaged and involved, because what is happening is only a few people are attending city council meetings or school board meetings or the committee meetings that are taking place, disciplinary meetings, hearing meetings that may be taking place in your school system. What books are going to be placed in your libraries or placed in the school system with regards to your history books? Guess what? There's a committee on the curriculum, a curriculum committee. And if you're serving on that curriculum committee, you can have an impact on what curriculum is being presented to our young people. All of these things are important as we're looking to have power through practice. As we're looking at power. Okay, we're going to take a moment to do announcements, acknowledgments, and commemoration. Okay, and I'm going to start with birthdays in the month of October. And of course, I haven't done all the birthdays in the month of October because there are a lot of people who were born in this month. But one person that I want to acknowledge is Bernie Mac. His birthday was October the 5th. And Bernie Mac was one of my favorite comedians. I could watch Bernie Mac anytime, every time. I could watch it.
He's on every Saturday morning.
Love Bernie Mac. Dick Gregory birthday, October the 12th. October the 12th. Dick Gregory and he was a comedian, but the thing that he did even more is social justice. He was an activist. He fought against apartheid. He fought against a lot of the issues that we're still fighting about today.
Mm-hmm.
Former Philadelphia Mayor John Street. I had almost forgotten about John Street.
Mm-hmm.
He was a twice mayor of Philadelphia, two-term mayor. Another person that today is not today, but the 19th, tomorrow is her birthday, LaWanda Page and Jennifer Holiday, not Hudson, but Holiday, because they get confused sometimes. But LaWanda Page, you may remember her as on Sanford and Son.
Okay.
And she and Fred Sanford would go at it. But guess what? Fred Sanford also selected her to be on that show. He selected her personally because he loved her comedic skills.
Mm-hmm.
And her half sister played the role of Fred Sanford's girlfriend.
Oh, keep it in the family.
Yeah. So guess what? When you have the power, and this is another way that you have power, guess what? You can hire people in these businesses that you work in.
Yeah.
So that when you get paid, they get paid too.
Yep.
All righty. Okay, so LaWanda Page and Jennifer Holiday, October the 19th. But also, we want to commemorate the origin of the Black Panther Party. October the 15th, 1966, in Oakland, California, was the beginning of the Black Panther Party. We want to acknowledge Bobby Seale, Huey Newton, Eldridge Cleaver, and then later on, Fred Hampton. We never, ever want to forget Fred Hampton, who was murdered in his bed by police officers.
Wow.
I believe he was only 24 years old. And a lot of the Panthers died very young, even though they were working to bring strengthening the community. They were the ones that fed children hot meals. They were the ones that worked to clean up the community and make them stronger. And they were identified as terrorists, all different types of names that the government decided to use against them, not because they were doing anything bad, but because they understood the power of numbers and they understood the power of educating their own community. And as they were doing those things, they began to be seen as a threat because then the Black community would be too knowledgeable. And instead of the children misbehaving and them, the government being able to lock them up in jail because they were participating in drug activities or any of the negative activities, the Black Panthers was looking for ways to ensure that the young people were actively involved in going to school and learning and become knowledgeable. And so that's what was more of a threat. That was more of a threat than misbehavior, because misbehavior, you could just lock people up or you could just shoot them in the street. And so they would be no more. So I definitely wanted to acknowledge them today. Also, some upcoming events on Saturday, which is in a couple of days. We're going to have an event, a fish fry at Level Green. It is going to be from 2:30 in the afternoon until, so we don't know how long. One of the young ladies with the NAACP, she's working hard to, of course, make sure people are registered to vote, but also make sure that people go to the polls and vote. So she also want to make sure that people know who the candidates are, educated about their candidates. And she want to make sure that the candidates who are running for office address issues that is that the community is concerned about, and making sure that if they get elected to office, that they actually serve the community and they don't just blow smoke and blow steam. So I want to thank Star, who has been working very, very hard. She puts a chair out on the weekends and during the week, and was registering people to vote. Of course, October the 15th was the last day that you could register to vote and vote in this election without having to use a provisional ballot. Now, you can continue to register to vote on election day, and however, you will be required to use a provisional ballot. So we definitely want to make sure that we continue to push and encourage and educate persons about the importance of the election and the importance of voting. Now, also upcoming, we have an event called a farmers market, and that is going to be on the 19th at New Jerusalem Ministry on Singleton Way from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. So if you don't have anything to do on Saturday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., you can go to Singleton Way for a farmers market. And that same day, they will be doing a community health fair from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. So they'll be going on simultaneously at New Jerusalem Ministries. We want to encourage you. This is a way to get out in the community. This is a way to be able to volunteer and help in our community. They will be having free health screening information, flu vaccines, cholesterol, blood pressure, diabetes, women's health, men's health, behavioral health, weight loss, and also free haircuts and free giveaways. So again, there are all types of things that are going on in our community that we can gain access to and take advantage of. But we can only put the information out to you. It is your responsibility to get involved. And when you gain access to this information, make sure that you share it with others. At the farmers market, they're going to have okra. And I yelled out okra because that is one of my favorite vegetables. A lot of people don't like okra. I love okra. There will be sweet potatoes, herbs, basil, winter squash, lettuce, kale, pumpkins, and much, much more. So there will be a farmer's market. I'm assuming that these things will be for sale because that does not say free. The health fair says there's no cost. There's free health screenings, and there will be persons there to help you with taking your blood pressure, etc. So with that being said, these are some of the things that's taking place in the community. And then last but not least, Election Day is November the 5th. You can still vote early. There will be 2 days that you can vote on Saturday. You'll be able to vote Saturday, October the 26th, and Saturday, November the 3rd. There will be satellite offices opening up effective, I believe, October the 22nd. I was supposed to put that on the list. And I'm sorry, I have a lot on my list, but that is not up there. So I apologize. I do apologize. But you will be able to vote early. And if you have not registered to vote yet, you will be able to register on election day, but you will only be allowed to use a provisional ballot. Now, one of the things that we are still encouraging is our young people to continue to register to vote. Even though you will not be 18 by November the 5th, go ahead and register early because guess what? You're going to be 18 by next year when it's election time. And it's a lot easier to get you to vote, to register early than to be running around trying to get people at the last minute. So I'm encouraging our young people to register early. And if you go ahead and register now, then you will be able to vote next year and you won't have to worry about whether or not you're registered. But again, you still are going to have to check because as you may have heard, this governor and his folks have removed a number of people from the voter rolls. However, the Department of Justice has sued the Commonwealth of Virginia for removing people off the voting rolls. Just removed a bunch of people. So keep that in mind. Voting is something that is very important. However, no one group or organization can do everything. So we need you involved. We need you to grab a hold of some of this power, and through practice, by making sure that you continue to engage our community, that we can see a better outcome. I think that is all of the announcements today. The announcements, the acknowledgments, and the commemoration. And again, I do want to commemorate the Black Panther Party for their work. And they're still existing, but we need to strengthen them as well. That's the other thing. When we have something good, we should not allow it to die. We should continue to work and build upon those things and make them stronger. I tell everybody, whatever organization that you want to be a part of, go into that organization to make it better. Don't sit around complaining or whatever, because the more you complain, that is also a practice. And that practice is damaging. It is not for your good. Okay, so let's do better. When we know better, we do better. Okay, let's talk about power through practice. Access, influence, engagement, building, leverage. One of the things that we have a habit of doing is we get into civil rights or into any of these organizations, and we tend to think that in order to gain power, we feel like when we come to the table, we're always coming there as a beggar. No, it's your tax dollars. Go to the table as a broker, not a beggar. It's all in how we form the messaging. It's all in how we think about what it is that we're doing and why we do what we do. So when we go to the table, we go to the table with the mindset that we're going to broker a deal. It is our tax dollars, and we want to make sure that we are getting our money back that we put into the system. For example, if we are 22% of the community, then what we should be looking at when we look at brokering deals and we're looking at power through practice is we need to make sure that we have the right people at the table on an ongoing basis. So if we're 22% of the community, we should be looking at if there are contracts coming to the city, if there's funding coming to the city, then we should be moving toward ensuring that we are getting our 22%. That's just an example. If we're looking at when the city writes these contracts, CIP contracts, we want to make sure that when they are doing those contracts, that there are subcontractors in there that are from our community. So these are the type of things that we want to look at when we're using our power. We want to make sure that we're looking at this in all of the areas of the community. Housing, for instance, I just went to a housing event the other night, looking at housing and how we can better have more workforce housing or affordable housing. We want to look at workforce and affordability, because they can build all the houses they want. But if people can't afford to live in them, that's a problem. And if you have all of these people who are in a situation where they need housing and you don't have anything that's affordable, that's a problem. So what we want to do is we want to look at the various ways that monies come into our local government, from what sources, and where is the money being used. What was the parameters when the federal government sent the money down to the state and the state sent it to the local localities? What were the parameters that our locality had to meet in order to receive that fund? And did they meet them? Did they meet those parameters? We need to stay aware of all of these different things. And I know it sounds like a lot, and it is. It is. I've been out here a long time, and I'm telling you, trying to keep up with all the different ways and all the different things that are being done in our various cities and all the different things, and how our money is being reallocated, misappropriated, what have you. You almost need someone from the community doing this as a full-time job, tracking what is going on. And that's sometimes where we end up losing our power, because if we don't know something, then that makes us less powerful. We need to be aware of these things. And when we are aware of them, we need to make sure that we fight for those things that belong to us. We don't beg for those things that belong to us. We broker for those things that belong to us. We leverage our power for the things that belong to us. And so when it comes to elections, we need to know who our friends are, recognizing we have no permanent friends, no permanent enemies. We only have permanent issues. And that's how we have to operate. And we have to operate that way in all facets of society. I know it gets a little crazy, when we're having these conversations with regards to our cities, our states, our federal government. It gets a little from time to time. But these conversations, we must have these conversations. Otherwise, we're going to find ourselves, or the next generation, starting from scratch. So what is important that we do as activists, as faith-based, is that we should be having classes right now for our young people, and not wait until they graduate and go off to college and gain additional knowledge. We should be doing those things right now. We should be teaching them now power through practice, meaning our young people, we should be teaching them now that it's important for them to go to city council and speak. We should be teaching them now that it's important for them to go to school board meetings and speak. There are a lot of committees that have young people on the committees. Housing preservation and many of the other committees, they have young people from high school on those committees. Again, if we were able to keep up with all of these things that are going on in our city, we would need full-time people from our community that is a paid staff, whose job it would be to keep up with every committee in the city of Virginia Beach and every person that is serving on those committees. What are the demographics of those committees? What do they look like? Who are these people that are serving on the committees? What is their background? What is their passion? Is this a committee that they are serving on because they knew someone on city council and city council said, look, let me put them on that committee. And so they're sitting there, but they're not making any inroads as it pertains to our community. So therefore, they're not using the power that they should have when they are sitting on those committees. The committees that have a young person, a high school student, how many of those committees that have those high school students, how many of those students come from our community? Where is our power? Are we leveraging power to ensure that those high school students look like us and come from our community, come from our family, or come from friends of our families? Those are the things going forward that we are going to have to look at. If we're not looking at those things, if we're not monitoring those things, it's going to continue to stay as it is now. It's going to continue to be business as usual. And so we're going to now talk a little bit about this upcoming election. All righty. Everybody's ready for the election. Everybody's voted. How many people have voted in advance? How many people are waiting for election day? And how many people feel like they can't vote? We need to make sure that we're working on all those issues. Persons who can't vote, we need you to ask your family and your friends to vote on your behalf. But we also need to connect you with groups and organizations who specializes in getting your rights back. So if you're out there and you don't have the right to vote, we need to make sure that you get connected to groups and organizations who assist you with getting your rights back. For those of you who are registered and are able to vote, we continue to ask you to vote early. Don't wait until the last day. And you say, well, why not? Why not just wait? I love to vote on election day. I did too for years. I voted on election day. And then I got sick. And I was scared to death that I was not going to be well enough to get to the polls and vote on election day. So it just sent a trigger in my head that let's not wait until election day. A couple of reasons why you don't want to wait until election day. One, if you vote early, if there are any hiccups, the chances are you can get them corrected. Whatever it might be, you can get it corrected and go and vote. Okay, because you didn't wait to the last second. The other reason why you want to vote early is it's kind of like doing a bank shot when you play basketball. You kind of bank in all of those votes. And then toward the end, you're pushing out the people to the polls who may not have voted. So now you have an idea of the number of people who have voted in advance. And now you know who to focus on. So there's no need to focus on Georgia because you already know that Georgia has voted early. So now let's focus on persons that Georgia knows who hasn't voted early, and let's work on getting those people to the polls. So now you're using your time wisely, you're using your sources wisely, and you're increasing the number of people that are voting. Because if you keep asking Georgia to vote and she's already voted, now you're wasting time that could be used towards someone who hasn't voted. The other thing that you want to keep in mind, there are a lot of elections this year. In the Commonwealth of Virginia, we're voting not only for the top of the ticket, the president and vice president who are on a ticket together. You're also voting for our state senator. You're also voting for our Congress people. And you're voting for our local government people, from the mayor to city council to school board. And because one of the members who served on city council moved into the position of sheriff, you now have an election for sheriff because it was only a temporary appointment until this November. When we have appointments or for different positions, they are only appointed until the next election if that seat is not at the end of the term. Well, even if it is at an end of the term, you still have to vote for them because the sheriff term does not fully end until 2 more years. That position was voted on in January. Someone served in the position until they run for election in November, and then they run it. Whoever wins serves out the remainder of the term, which should end, I believe, in 2 years. So keep those type of things in mind. Same thing happened in District 4. The young lady stepped down from her seat. There had to be an appointment for that seat until the end of the year, but the person who got the appointment could run, or she didn't have to run. That was up to her. But ultimately, we have 3 people running in District 4 for school board, and the person will get elected in November, and then they will serve out the remainder of the term, and then they will have to run again. I hope that makes sense because it's really hard to tell you this over a computer screen, but
Right.
all of these things are term. I don't want to say term limit, but all of these positions are by a set term. So in this case, District 4 term would normally end in 2026, but because the person stepped down early, we have to have an election in 2024 to serve through 2026. And the candidate, whoever it is, can run again in 2026 to serve a full 4-year term. Okay?
Righty.
All righty. So with that being said, there are other things that are important when we look at elections. When we look at elections, especially in a presidential year, and I'm looking 42, I think I have 2 minutes?
Yeah, about 3.
3 minutes? Okay. So I'm going to do something really, really quickly. When we vote for President of the United States, the President of the United States submit names for judgeships, for federal benches, and for the U.S. Supreme Court. So some of the things that have happened when certain people had the opportunity to appoint people to the U.S. Supreme Court, this is something that was changed. In 2022, Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization, which is basically abortions, Roe v. Wade was overturned because of who was elected to president. 2022, listen to that date. Affirmative action, Students for Fair Admissions v. Harvard College. Okay. Affirmative action, it ruled that race could not be considered as a factor in the college admissions process, although left open the possibility that a college could consider an applicant's personal experience with discrimination. The ruling has since been used to challenge corporate diversity programs. So keep in mind, because the Supreme Court changed, there were these persons who serve on the U.S. Supreme Court who make decisions that can impact you and your family. So the affirmative action that we've had for years was basically overturned. Now, keep in mind, no one said that people who have legacy whose fathers or mothers pay for them to go to a particular college. There was nothing done about that. So therefore, even though you may meet all the qualifications, they're saying that if your race is used as a parameter, that would be considered discrimination to all of the other people that want to get accepted to this particular college. Campaign finance, Citizen United versus the FEC in 2010 ruled that limits on independent political spending by unions and corporations are unconstitutional. This led to the creation of super PACs, which can accept unlimited money from donors to support a candidate. So if people are screaming and yelling, why is it so expensive to run for office? It's because now there can be unlimited amount of money put into these races, which makes it difficult for an average Joe to run for political office. So this election is not just about the president, the vice president, the Congress, the Senate. It is about having the right people in position to rule on behalf of the American people. So depending upon who you support for the presidency of the United States can determine whether or not there are people serving on our Supreme Court, serving on our federal courts, who may work in opposition to what we need. So again, power through practice. Your practice is your vote. That's your power. So when you vote, when you get your family and friends to vote, when you make sure that you elect people who will work on your behalf, therein lies your power. And if you vote again and again and again, if you visit your Congress, if you visit and call your congressional people, if you call your city council members, your school board members, that is your power through practice, because you did not sit down and not do anything. You stayed engaged and you worked on behalf of your community. So with that said, I am Georgia Allen. This brings me to the end of our show today. It is so great to be here with you. I hope this was informational and was beneficial to you. See you next week.
All right. Thank you so much, Georgia. Once again, you've been listening and watching the community activist Georgia Allen on GA for Justice. And remember, it's because of you that she does this each and every week. So please share this link and inform people about her talk show each and every Thursday from 12 until 1. Until next time, until next week, you've been watching GA for Justice with the community activist, Miss Georgia Allen. So long, y'all.